Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Conspiracies. I'm your host, PJ Williams, and joining me today is a good friend of mine, Paul Stobbs. You may have read his book, The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. I actually see that on the wall behind you. That's awesome, dude. Welcome onto the show, Paul. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, PJ. I really appreciate it. It should be a good one.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've done some podcasts together in the past, and maybe some people aren't familiar with your work, but I'm sure we'll get into it because there's some definite interesting Nephilim clown symbolism in this. And so when I reached out to you, you told me that your fans of your show, Understanding Conspiracy, had recommended this to you a lot for the symbolism in it. And I had not seen this movie before. You said you hadn't seen this movie before. My brother was a fan of it. My brother's a huge fan of horror films, so I called him up and I said, "Hey, let's watch this together." And we had a really interesting conversation, pausing the movie and afterwards about the symbolism, the colors, the things like that. So yeah, we'll get into all of that stuff. But this is a very interesting movie, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, like you said, people have been for a good part since this movie came out, a year or two ago now.
Yeah, 2022.
Yep. Yeah, Paul, have you seen Smile? You need to see Smile. Make a video about Smile. Why haven't you talked about Smile yet? And I'm like, I am a full-time father, self-employed, busy guy who doesn't have writing a book, who doesn't have time to watch films or TV. So,
right.
But then you obviously said, "Oh, well, I do this thing, Real Conspiracies. We talk about movies. Do you want to come on?" I said, "Yes." I need to talk about this film. I need to watch this film, and we need to talk about it to get. So this is perfect because I'm working, and it was for my job this time. I could justify watching.
There you go. Exactly. It's so fun. It's so funny because you're exactly right. For the last couple of years, podcasting more and more, and now I'm basically doing it full time. I have not been able to watch movies. I've not been able to watch TV, and I get those questions a lot, like, why, have you seen this? Have you covered this? This would be interesting for your conspiracy stuff. And so Real Conspiracies was kind of that excuse to give myself to watch movies again. I've been a film fan my whole life. I went to college for this type of stuff, and I did a little bit of work for the state of Michigan, working in TV for a little while. So it's really cool to kind of jump back into this stuff and give myself that excuse of I'm watching this for work, essentially, right? So yeah.
It wasn't an easy sell to the wife, I'll admit, but I got to watch the film anyway. So there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. There's movies that I watch with her for the show, and then there's other ones where I know that there's just no way. This is one of the movies she would never watch in a million years. So she's not a fan of horror at all. But for people who don't know what this movie is, we'll get into it. It is a 2022 American psychological supernatural horror film. It was written and directed by Parker Finn, who's interesting because this is like his only thing. He did another movie called, he did two short films. The first one was called The Hide Behind, and then there was one called Laura Hasn't Slept, which is what this was based on. It was I actually watched it. It's 10 minutes long, and you see that same character, Caitlin Stacy, reprise her role as Laura in the beginning of this movie. And then he did Smile based off of that and Smile 2. So very new director, writer. So all he's basically done is these two things based on these two kind of supernatural entities. This movie stars Sosie Bacon, who is Kevin Bacon's daughter. I found that out. Kyle Gallner, Cal Penn, and again, Caitlin Stacy. And this movie cost about $17 million to make. And they actually spent more in promoting this movie by far than making it. So the $17 million to make, they spent $50 million promoting this movie. And did you see some of the promotional campaign material, some of the weird things they did to, AGR this thing?
I remember one distinct one is they kept panning in in the middle of the Super Bowl or something, or in the middle of a football game. They panned in on the actress with that creepy smile, like you mentioned, just in the crowd staring at the camera, and it was zooming in on. I remember a lot of guerrilla publicity type stuff going on for this movie. I remember the hype. I definitely remember the hype. Does the film live up to the hype? Well, we'll talk about that today, I suppose. But
yeah, we'll talk about it for sure. Yeah, but that's what they did. They would get actors. They would wear these yellow shirts that smile on them. They were at football games. I think you said the Super Bowl, baseball games. One was standing behind Al Roker on Good Morning America. So all of that stuff, a lot of money put into the promotion, but it paid off because this movie made $217 million at the worldwide box office. So it did really good. Rotten Tomatoes gives it an 80%. The site's critical consensus reads deeply creepy visuals and a standout Sosie Bacon further elevates Smile's unsettling exploration of trauma, adding to the rare feature that satisfyingly expands on a short. This was Marissa Mirabal of IndieWire gave this film a B-. She said that the plot similarities to movies like It Follows, The Ring, Oculus, Final Destination were all very apparent. She said, quote, Smile navigates unhealed trauma through supernatural lens and mischievous juxtaposition, despite feeling like a shadow of other stories. Did you get that as well? I mean, I felt like the same way. Like there was things I enjoyed about the film, but I definitely was like, oh, this is The Ring. I even made the joke at one point. He asks her, how long do people survive after this encounter? And I was like, 7 days. I was making a joke. She's like, oh, about a week. And I was like, yeah, exactly. It's The Ring.
I did think that as well, watching that. I mean, to be honest, I'm one of those guys now. I predicted every single thing before it happened watching this, because it's formulaic. It was definitely formulaic, and the cheap jump scares just made me go, "Oh, come on, you can do that." It's kind of, but it had that early 2000-esque vibe to it. You know what I mean? I definitely got like The Ring immediately.
Exactly. And my brother said It Follows is almost exactly the same movie. I haven't watched It Follows yet, but The Ring, I was not a fan of The Ring. I feel like I'm the only person who watched it back then. I remember I must have been like 8 or 9 years old, and everybody at school was like, dude, you got to watch The Ring. It's the scariest movie ever made. So I waited till one night when my parents were out of the house, and I turned off all the lights and I watched The Ring by myself. I was like, this will be the scariest experience ever. And I was just massively disappointed. I did not like that film. But This I felt like at least, whatever you could say about Smile, I felt like it was at least better than The Ring. It took all the same plot points, but it did it better.
Yeah, I remember The Ring distinctly as a kid. I remember my mum loved it. She's like a horror fanatic type person growing up, and I remember watching it. I think it must have been 15, 16 at that time. I can't remember how long ago. It was quite a while ago, Yeah,
it was a long time ago. I feel like I don't think I could have been. I remember my childhood based on where I lived. So I know I lived in the area where I watched this between 3rd and 5th grade. So it had to have been somewhere between like 8 and 10 years old that I watched it. But
Well, I was very much into horror growing up as a teenager, like the Hellraiser series, things like this. So I wasn't. Gore and stuff wasn't an issue. I'm pretty much desensitized. I mean, I'm a born again Christian. I don't even watch films, but I watched this, and I don't get the oomph anymore watching horror. I don't really easily get disturbed. But The Ring did go more so into the disturbing unknown realm rather than trying to just make you jump with screams, which was appreciated. But it's, for sure, again, it was very much a formulaic, predictable film, a lot like this one. But I do think Smile it was good.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah. I enjoyed it, thoroughly. Yeah. Because again, it's just chock full of things we're going to talk about today, symbolism. But was it better than The Ring? I'm not here to start a war.
Sure. I got one more review I put in my notes. This guy, Jeffrey M. Anderson of Common Sense Media, gave this a 2 out of 5 star. This is a person who did not like the film. He said, the image of a creepy, sinister smile is so primal and so chilling that it might have inspired something truly penetrating, but sadly, the horror movie is a constant fallback on noisy jump scares, which you brought up as well. A lot of cheap jump scares. It definitely had that creepy element, like the use of a smile as a scare tactic, as hiding something as a mask for something more sinister behind it, is a very clever way to do a horror film. Like that's why when I saw the trailers for it, I was like, I wasn't really taken in by the trailers, but I liked the concept. I liked the concept of, all right, here's something that's supposed to be happy and whatever, but because your eyes don't match up with it, it creates that juxtaposition. It creates that like eerie sense of whatever. But what would you give this movie if you had to rate it? I guess my question, like,
I give a horror movie, I'll give it like a 3 out of 5. It's okay. It's not groundbreaking. Sure. The hype definitely it didn't live up to what it was. It's only successful because of its marketing, is what I'll say. If as a standalone film, it probably would have been delegated to like DVD only or whatever they're doing these days. I don't know how it works now. Straight to streaming platform only type film, realistically. But I think they did a fantastic job kind of playing on that, again, that primal, instinctual kind of fear of something that smiles but has sinister intentions. I mean, that's pretty much what my entire work is about, to be honest.
Exactly,
and so I think maybe, getting all conspiratorial about it, because I am that guy, maybe that was the point. They were playing on something to monetize off a truth about the reality of demons, that they do have very wide, creepy smiles in reality, But again, not everyone who reviews movies believes in the spiritual realm. And again, the film hits on that point that no matter what happened,
Yeah, no, exactly right. Like the film kept making this case like that these people have no concept of the supernatural at all. Like it was almost as if they didn't live in our reality, because in every other horror movie you might have an agnostic character or an atheist character, but they at least question. They're like, holy crap, am I wrong about the supernatural? Is there such thing as demons? Is there such thing as possession? You know, maybe I should see a priest. And in this movie, there's I don't even remember the scene exactly, but they were talking about like, how can I beat this? Is there any way at all? And they're like, there's just no way at all. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, holy water, a priest, like none of that, like none of this shows up as even a concept to them. There's never even an attempt. There's never even a possibility in any character's mind outside of Sosie Bacon's character, who eventually has to realize that it's something supernatural, that it could be at all. So I found that very interesting, that it wasn't even a question in this movie. There was just no question that this thing could have been supernatural to anyone.
I kind of understand the angle they're going for, because she was very much in a therapist secular world and around psychologists and patients with schizophrenia, and they were trying to make that parallel for the whole film, that is she crazy or is it real, because she has the exact same symptoms as one of her patients at the beginning, who's a man, but he's presented as somebody who just is insane. He doesn't have a demon, and he says all these things and has these things, you know, that's wrong with him. But then she develops the exact same symptoms throughout by the end of the film, and looks just as crazy as him in every respect, but she has a demon, you know. So I think they're trying to get this parallel, like throughout the whole film, that she lives in a world where there's no room for the paranormal.
Yeah, no, I like that parallel too, because it was interesting, because I think one of the points, and I'm going to say this up front because I always get the comments, I'm going to spoil the living crap out of this movie from here on out, so you know, whatever. But I think that where was I going with this thought? Well, I'll come back to it. I had another thought that I wanted to bring up, which is you were talking about how there's a lot of cheap jump scares and how it didn't really play off as well as The Ring in that eerie factor. And that's one of the things that I've noticed in horror movies, that they should have learned the lesson back in the 70s with Jaws and a lot of other movies that made the case that actually not showing the monster is scarier. And this one fell into the same trap as, I think it was, I can never remember the difference between Sinister and Insidious, but the one that had the Darth Maul character that looked like whatever. This made that same kind of problem in the end, I felt like. And even before I watched the movie, I had heard this movie's really good until the monster reveal at the end, and then it kind of ruins things. I have a possible different take on that we'll come back to, why the monster was shown in explicit detail. But yeah, I do think it's interesting that they're not, that they're showing that juxtaposition of, this is a world where mental illness is the only answer to this woman. This is what she's been raised in. And even the audience, I noticed a lot of fan theories, you know, because the obvious answer is that it's a demon. It's shown to you. We know this. It very, very clearly is. And there was a lot of people who were saying, well, what if it's actually just her mind making up this thing, and maybe it's not really a demon, and maybe we're living in Carl's head, or maybe we're living in her head, and all this stuff. Like, even the audience isn't accepting this, and that has a lot to say about the culture that we live in, that people are not willing to accept the paranormal, and therefore, in my belief, are at peril of these things. Oh yeah. I mean, I made a lot of notes throughout the film, and even at the very beginning, the first victim that causes the transference of the demon to the psychiatrist, to the main character, to the protagonist. She's there and she's trying to explain herself. And obviously she's there like, so, you know, how are you feeling? What's been going on? I'm just trying to help, you know, you're safe here. She's like, you don't believe me, do you? Like, you think I'm crazy. And she says, I'm a PhD candidate, not a lunatic. Okay. So it's implying like anybody that hasn't got like the wherewithal to have a PhD, or people who are in that realm, you know, it's kind of, again, you don't talk about this type of stuff. You only strictly, and it's kind of drawing that line, isn't it? Like, smart people don't believe in ghosts. Right. I'm a PhD candidate. I'm not insane, you know, but this is happening to me. And then he goes on, and then at one point, she blacks out, I think, and then she's in the middle of the road for some reason. And the guy says, "What are you, crazy?" Yeah. They keep playing on that, like, everyone's crazy who could possibly have any encounter with anything spiritual. She was always framed, like you said, as insane by everyone around her. Even her fiance was like, "Are you talking about ghosts?" Yeah. It's like, what do I do with that? You know what I mean? Like, what am I marrying? This is insane. You know, are you sure you haven't just genetically inherited your mother's insanity? It's kind of just gaslighting all the time. And it's like,
I suppose, like I said, it does play on that desperation of nobody believes me, no matter how much I try and explain this.
Yeah.
When at the birthday party, she's looking around, everyone saying, "Don't you see it? It's sat right there." Everyone's like, "Oh dear, she's gone. She's snapped. She's finally snapped."
Sosie Bacon did a really good job in this film, because I was thinking from the very beginning of the movie, she looks a little bit unhinged. She starts off looking overly tired, and like there's something going on in her life that she's just unhappy with and is masking already. So like when she gets to those scenes where she starts to realize that something is manifesting, that there is a demon that is following her, that is demonizing her, and she's having these moments where she's trying to calmly explain it, and then she just becomes irrational, and there's like, I'm sorry. Like the acting on her part, I got to give props for it, because she did such a good job of like of walking that balance between I'm only upset because people aren't listening to me, but I also am coming off as actually nuts, like as an actual crazy person.
But the annoying thing is, and it irked me a little bit, because it's kind of, in reality, if my wife came up to me and says, "Paul, I think a demon is attached to me through trauma and is haunting me and appearing in places and making me lose my mind and is threatening me," my first reaction would be, right, let's get the Bible out and get Jesus involved. Let's get this sorted. I believe you, and there are more people in the world like that than this movie is portraying.
Well, that was the point I was making in the beginning, is that there's not a single person anywhere in this film that has that notion, and that was weird to me, because normally you have at least, again, even in other films, even if the character's an atheist, they've heard of demonic possession. They've seen a movie that somebody used holy water. Like they're at least questioning if they're wrong. And
are we like
in this.
offended that we don't have representation in this film? Is that what's going on?
It's not enough diversity in this film. We need some
now I know how they feel. I get it now.
Yeah. Now I understand the Acolyte. There we go.
Yeah, I get it now. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, this movie starts off with this guy Carl, like you said. He's going crazy. He's going, we're all gonna die. We're all gonna die. And the showing her kind of becoming Carl is the point. It starts off with him. She's a sane person. This is where Laura walks in after this, and we get Caitlin Stasey reprising her role, which is kind of like the sequel to the Laura Hasn't Slept short film. And she ends up killing herself in front of Rose, which is the main character. And this whole scene is the transference of the demon. This is what we come to find out later, is that by seeing this trauma in front of her, she's passing it off to her. I heard one person bring up the fact that the camera then zooms in on the eyes of Rose, symbolically showing that the eyes are the window to the soul. So this is transferred from soul to soul. And there's even a thing that doesn't really make sense the first time you watch it, but becomes clear later, where Laura, after she starts freaking out and backing into the corner, opens her mouth up really wide. And this is the moment where she goes from being demonized to demon possessed. And you see this physically happen in the end of the movie with Rose. So this is kind of what we got setting up is this whole thing. Did you have any thoughts on? You go ahead.
Yeah. Well, the phrase I use is oppression to possession.
There we go.
So you start off being oppressed, and it's pretty much it rules with this one. They use fear and trauma to break down your will enough to get in you. That's basically what it was trying to do, wasn't it? So the more this demon traumatizes our protagonist throughout this film, the weaker her resolve gets, and once she's finally just fully flat out done, just like the opening scene, she's at the end of her tether, to the point where she's been sectioned and dragged into a lunatic section of the wing of the hospital. You know what I mean? She has utterly lost it. And that's when the possession took place.
Right. And that's exactly what happens with Laura in the beginning, because she thinks, look, I'm a PhD candidate. I'm going to talk to somebody. I'm going to get someone to listen. And the moment she realizes that this was her last chance, her last thread, and we actually get the last chance image with Rose later, which I want to bring up when we talk about like colors and stuff. But this is Laura's last chance. And as soon as her last chance is over, she's been fully broken down, like you said, oppression to possession, and that's what's happening here. That
opening scene, though, we do have to say that the framing of it, color symbolism, something I think we're going to talk about a lot throughout all of this.
Absolutely, it's so strong in this movie.
Really wildly in your face, obviously. Like, they want you to, well, maybe they don't want you to notice it, but it's not an accident, is what we're saying. So I thought in that opening scene kind of pans out, and she's being interviewed to try and find out how have you ended up here. You know what I mean? And it's kind of funny that it was Laura hasn't slept or something like that. Was that the original? And the main protagonist has been said, her boss said, "Have you slept? I'm like, how long have you been here for?"
Yeah, well, the first thing that Cal Penn says to Rose.
Yeah. But then she stays, doesn't she? Like it's like an hour later on the clock. Because I was looking at the times on the clock, and I think it goes from like 3:28 to like 4:30 or something. So it's an hour later when she should have left. But this person comes in kicking and screaming. She sits with her, and they're on blue chairs with like a window in the background that's glowing red. So they clearly, like said, I think you said this, put like a pink film on it somehow behind the blinds to make it glow red.
The curtains were all pink, and then there was other scenes. So like when the light shined into these super blue rooms, it was this blue and pink or blue and red symbolism. And then there's other scenes where we'll come back to the scene later, but when she goes to the professor's house later, there's zero reason at all. Like we don't have the pink curtains anymore, the blue walls. Like you could understand it in the hospital, which is all painted pink and blue. And there's a couple of reasons for it, but there's even like a normie reason for it that I'll bring up in a second. But later on, there's scenes like in the prison and in the house that it's just like there's zero reason for this room to be bathed in pink light or bathed in blue light with pink light bulbs like it is in the prison. So it becomes incredibly like bashing over the head later on. And originally you're just like, well, it's just the hospital's colors. But then it's just like they're painting awnings and they're changing color. We can come back to that. But you were saying that this room has the pink coming through the window or the reddish coming through the window, these two blue chairs, and then these yellow flower vase right in the center.
There's that as well, but also on each end of the room in the corner are two like trimmed bushes, shall we say. Topiary style bushes, which frame it like two pillars. And you look at this thing, it's like, could you get any more Freemasonic with the duality symbolism in between the two pillars here? It's like they were sat between the portal to get into the other realm. Like it's symbolically speaking, but like they were in the middle of the gates, you know what I mean, before this whole thing happened. And again, I'll leave it there for now because as scenes go on, I think we can develop this idea a bit further. Oh
yeah, but you're right. It's got the two pillar symbolism 100%. And then yellow is interesting. I want to ask your question. I want to ask questions on yellow in a minute because I've been trying to decipher some of the color stuff. And I've read a lot of theories, and it seems like one of those things like normally you would read like an IMDb or something like that, and it would be like, oh, here was what the director was thinking. You'd get like those. I couldn't find anybody that had online at least like had a theory on this stuff that made any sense. They're just like, well, they're bashing us over the head with these colors. But why? And there's some theories on yellow and green and red and blue and stuff like that. After this whole thing happens, this girl cuts her throat. I don't know if we get this before or after the police interrogation, but we do get a scene that you brought up to me, which is that we see the big red clown smile on the white sheet over top of a checkerboard floor. So we get another Freemasonic symbolism of the duality, checkerboard floor, this sacrifice. And
not only sacrificial symbolism, which obviously was, but also in my own research, it's believed in the black and white fractal patterned realms is where the Nephilim reside, who also have clownish features. So I think it's like a nod and a wink between like what lies beyond, you know. And it's not the last time we see this character as well that killed herself in the beginning, because she repeatedly appears throughout the rest of the film. Which obviously is the demon now using like her skin or like her face as a mask to manifest, isn't it? So I thought, but you can't miss the checkerboard floor, especially after what we just saw with the pillars and the red and blue, and it cuts to this scene of a dead body on a checkerboard floor. I mean, it's pretty in your face at the beginning. And I think maybe that's the point, because you look at any statistics of like a YouTube video, people stop watching after like 20 minutes. So maybe that was the point. They need to cram it in at the beginning, and then we can ease up on the symbolism a little bit more as we go on now, because everyone's, you know, we've got it in. It's good. Well, everyone knows it's one of us.
This guy seemed like he was so intent on you not missing the symbolism that if you missed it at any point, he would just bash you over the head with it throughout the film. But yeah, we get this scene. The next scene we get, I can't remember if this happens before or after, but the police come and interrogate Rose, and we get more views of the hospital. We see it is very pink and blue. But one of the other things I noticed, Redditor pointed out, is that Joel, the ex-boyfriend cop, wears green in every single scene except the one where it's not him, where it is the entity pretending to be him. The other character that wears green in every single scene is Cal Penn. And these are always the soothing, kind of rational characters. So there might be some symbolism there, some contrast with her character.
I was saying to you, wasn't I, before? It's like the green in her office was the same green as my office.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no. I chose this because it's a calming, focusing, stay in the moment color where you can just get your work done without anything too garish, but it's soothing like nature. So maybe there's something to that. Like I said,
well, I think that is what the green symbolizes in this case, right? Is this calming concept, because Kal Penn's character is very rational. He's a good boss. He's letting her, he's understanding of her. He's not like, hey, you're a screw up, take a week off unpaid. He's always trying to help her. He's always trying to be rational. She's treated Joel like absolute crap. He's her ex-boyfriend and whatever, and he still treats her as the calm and rational character throughout the film. So I think that green is that calming feeling. And there's a lot of psychology to the colors here. To bring up some of the psychology with the pink, since we're talking about the hospital really quick, one of the things that I found is that this exact pink that's being used is called Baker Miller pink. And this is a very famous type of pink because it's also known as drunk tank pink. So it's said to temporarily reduce aggression in prisoners. So they tried this. I don't know when. Well, back in the day, they tried this. They painted prison drunk tanks and things like that, this exact shade of pink, and they found out that it worked to calm people down. But then later on with more study, they found it actually only calmed people down for 30 minutes. And then after that calming effect, it actually made them worse. It made them more agitated, more angry. Violence in prisons went up. So with the short study, with the 20, 30 minutes, the heart rate goes down, all that stuff, that was enough for them to start painting these drunk tanks Baker Miller pink, and then after putting it in prisons, they're like, oh, this is actually causing people to become aggressive. So I think that's definitely some of the symbolism going on here.
Well, I think everybody knows the feeling of painting a bedroom one color and then being absolutely sick of it 2 months later.
Yeah.
But you thought it was a great idea at first. I think we can all appreciate that. But that's interesting. I didn't know that about that. But yeah, the pink, I remember that room now you're talking about. It's all coming back to me. And one thing, back to the interviewing, the two cops interviewing her about this person who just killed herself in front of her. Obviously, the boyfriend's staying quite quiet because you're not supposed to know this is the ex-boyfriend at this point. Mm-hmm. And he's quite calm. He doesn't really say anything condescending or bad about anybody. But the other cop is kind of like, so she was a nut job then. This she was clearly insane. You know what I mean? And the main character's like, nut job? What do you mean? Like crazy? And he's kind of like, well, we have to tell the family something.
He's like, well, let's review the facts. She walked into your office, broke a vase, and slit her throat in front of you with a smile on her face. I'd say she's crazy, but Rose is very offended by this, and Joel's like trying to be that mediator of like, well, we're not saying, I thought that was a very interesting scene, but it made more sense when you understood he was the ex-boyfriend.
Yeah.
It was a funny scene. I thought it was.
I thought it was hilarious, but at the same time, it's playing off that idea that anybody who deals with anything paranormal, anything weird or odd, like she died with a smile on her face that didn't leave. That's extremely weird. It's kind of like, it's simply very quickly, she was insane.
Right.
There's no other explanation.
Well, I mean, it is interesting too, because in that scene, you've got Joel and Rose who eventually come to understand the supernatural exists, and they open their minds up to it. And then you've got the cop who's kind of representative of everybody else, right? He's just like, nutbag. Oh, this person's spasming and foaming at the mouth. Their eyes are rolling around. They're just crazy. It couldn't be demon possession. It couldn't be anything else. Write it off and move on. And that's how most people treat the supernatural. Write it off, move on, forget about it. So I did think that was an interesting part of the scene.
A lot of it reminded me of Jerry Marzinski's work. I'm sure you've heard of Jerry. Mm-hmm. He's like an ex. He worked in prisons as like a therapist and a psychiatrist, and he came to the conclusion, and he's done a lot of work about this. And I've interviewed him on my channel. He's done the rounds on the podcast circuit, and he's come to the conclusion that these people are not crazy. They are clearly possessed, and he's not like a religious man. Mm-hmm. He's kind of like people who have like delusions aren't consistent. And they don't share similarities with other people having delusions either. But he's noticed a pattern. It's kind of like they're all experiencing the same thing. Right. And it's kind of the entities communicating to them and through them have a very distinct consciousness with the same agenda, separate from the person he's talking to. And it's kind of like, this isn't like schizophrenia as well understood. And this whole film kind of gave me that vibe that it's all just schizophrenia. It's all just voices in your head. And they do try and blur the lines throughout the whole film and make you question whether any of it is real, or did she kill the cat? That kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of, and it all throughout, because the thing is, the demon doesn't seem to be able to actually physically do anything until the end. which is what you realize.
Till the suicide ritual. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll leave that there for now. I'll let you carry on with the.
No, it's interesting. You bring up the cat because after the interrogation, they go back to Rose's house, and she's this lonely cat lady. You assume she's got a boyfriend, but he doesn't really seem like he's into her. It seems like a very much like, I've got my career, you've got your career, we can spend some time together in the evenings, but this is my thing and this is your thing, and I don't want any of your mess. And it becomes clear throughout the movie that is exactly his character. He wants everything to be perfect and neat and tidy, and he doesn't want any mess. And I look at this film, and I was talking about this on the last episode I did, where I've looked at films very differently throughout the years. I looked at films one way, then I went to study film, and I started noticing camera things and color palettes and all of that stuff. And then through studies of the occult and symbolism, stuff like that, I look at it another way. So I was looking at, just like from what is Hollywood trying to say? What is the film trying to say on a meta level or on a cultural level? What I initially kind of couldn't get past was like the few things that it felt like it was saying, but I couldn't be saying this. And the first thing that it made me think is Rose is kind of the spinster character, because it comes clear later that she wants kids. Like, it's never explicitly said, but it becomes pretty clear that she wants kids. She wants to be married. Her boyfriend would rather stay long-term engaged and not have kids, not deal with the mess. And then I keep seeing this pink and blue symbolism that looks like the exact pink and blue you'd see of babies. So I started to wonder if that's like part of her trauma, part of her mental issue, is that it's making a commentary of, hey, maybe it's not good for women to be 40 years old and getting to that point where they can't have kids anymore, and they're thinking about kids, and now they're on SSRIs and they're taking these drugs and they're doing this and that. So I was wondering if it was a commentary on that for a while, and it seemed like it could have been, at least with the whole cat thing and the boyfriend thing, and she's got the nice house, but she's not happy, and she's career focused and all that stuff. All the things that women have been told for a long time would make them happy, we're seeing very clearly is making them miserable, putting them on antidepressants. And to go with the antidepressant line, I also found another interesting correlation between this pink and blue, where I started looking at pills that are shaded this exact pink and blue. And I found this one here, which is that's what the pink and blue in the hospital looks like, basically.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
It's called, I'm going to mess this up, diltiazem hydrochloride. Diltiazem hydrochloride.
I wouldn't know if you got it wrong, so that's fine.
Thank you. So this is used to treat mental illness, mood disorders, things like that. So like, okay, maybe I'm onto something here. And then I looked a little bit further into this, however you pronounce it. And it there's some links according to PubMed that maybe this drug that initially helps you with your mood disorder eventually leads you to suicidal ideation. So I was wondering if that pink that's on the hospital walls that is calming at first and then makes you crazy, and then we got the pink and the blue, and we've got this lady who's treating people with drugs and trying to live this modern way. And when she goes and sees her therapist says basically, hey, you need to talk. We need to talk. You need to deal through your trauma of when you were a kid. And she says, just give me the drugs. So I started to wonder if this was, on that meta level, a commentary on the public, on the medical health profession, on the idea that, hey, we're doing things societally that are making women depressed. We're giving them SSRIs and drugs, and the drugs are leading to suicide. So all of that seemed there, and I think that all of that can be true, and it can still have all of the other occult symbolism that we're going to dive deeper into. But what is your thoughts on that, like that whole idea?
Well, first of all, you can tell this film is an absolute fiction, because there's no way that therapist wouldn't have just given her the drugs.
Exactly.
So they make it out like, how about we just hold off on the drugs for a week? And
when's the last time that happened?
Yeah, how about we just do a few sessions first to try and really get to the bottom of this emotionally? It's kind of, that doesn't happen. These doctors are paid to prescribe people drugs in reality, so they will give out the drug, whatever it is. And it's kind of funny because the main character is like, she's kind of like a drug addict. They make her out to be. It's like, so where do we stand with the drugs? You know what I mean? It's
like, she's like, yeah, cool, talk therapy. Yeah, but like the drugs, can you write me the script?
She's like itching. Yeah. She's like, so, how about the drugs? Can I get? She doesn't come across like that kind of character up until that random scene where she's like, Tyrone Biggums from like Dave Chappelle. It's kind of
got any more of those SSRIs, man?
That's what I mean. Yeah. But no, it's interesting because Yeah, the blue and pink. I didn't realize it was the color of those pills. I want to go back and find out what she called the drug now. Maybe it was the exact same thing you just mentioned.
You know what? I meant to do that before the show, and then I realized as soon as we sat down and started recording that I forgot to look up the drug. I know it started with a D. I wrote it down on a piece of paper that I lost, but yeah. I'm not sure if it's the exact same one because the drug that she was asking for was for some type of schizophrenia. So
is that what it's for? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so on the drug thing, I mean, we're talking about medical practice here, aren't we? We're talking about the practice of psychotherapy. The DSM-5 is always being updated. Always. Like, it's a constant influx, always out of date piece of like academic literature about what it is and is not defined as mental illness. So it's quackery at its finest to begin with. And these films, I find there's a lot of these films, like the therapist is always held up as like the paragon of wisdom and self-control and understanding. I think that might be something a more American thing. It's kind of like people trust their therapists way more than I think they should. And I think this film kind of maybe is trying to hint at that, but I don't know. It's also getting that programming feel like, trust your therapist, guys. They have your best interest at heart. You know what I mean? Sure. It's kind of, I do feel like there was a bit of pushing brainwashing on that. But one scene I noticed is when the main character was in her own office. I think she was interviewing or talking to the guy who is schizophrenic, who's saying we're all going to die. In the background, while she's doing her thing to calm him down and using these methods, there's a whiteboard behind her right here where I am. And everything's blurred on it, but the only focus is one line that says outdated process. I thought that was really interesting because it's kind of like his problem in reality may not be a medical issue that can be solved by talking it out or giving people drugs. It could be a spiritual issue. And that maybe was hinting at it in the background. It's kind of like what she's doing is not really...
It does almost seem layered like that, right? Is like on one hand, you've got, as I pointed out, the drugs and whatever, and all this stuff that everybody's just prescribed, shut up, take the drugs, right? And then, so you've got like this multi-layer thing of like, we can treat some people with drugs, but maybe we shouldn't do it as much. Maybe some people need to talk it out. And maybe it's not medical at all. Maybe these people are actually demonically possessed. And I actually appreciate about this I appreciated that about this film, that it's making the case, at least in my mind, when I'm watching, it's like, oh yeah, maybe some mental illness actually is demonic possession. Maybe we as a society forgot that. And there is some callbacks in this movie to a simpler time. There's a lot of 1950s symbolism when it comes to the birthday party. And I found it very interesting. It just kind of just bashes you over the head with this 1950s symbolism. If you watch the scene, the way that people are dressed, the framed shot with the kid with the big sparkling candle, I'm like, I would have seen this in a movie that was supposed to be representing the 1950s. And I point out to my brother, and he's looking at this, and he's like, yeah, why is everybody dressed like an the kid looks like Ralphie. The kid looks exactly like Ralphie from A Christmas Story. It's super weird.
Because she goes to like an old-timey train toy shop.
Who does that?
Who does that? And it's like, oh, the kid really loves toy trains, is what her sister says, just passing. And but she goes to this really old school toy train, and there's like a 1950s style-esque Art Deco-ish, that's like Fallout style drawing of like a family,
and it focuses on it
on the window, and it's good. But I think it's that contrast of smiles are supposed to be something that represents happiness and joy. But this whole film is all about flipping that upside down, and the camera is often panned upside down, in fact, and showing landscapes upside down. And I think that's very reminiscent of, let's say, the upside down of Stranger Things. A lot of references like that were coming through. What is it? What Lies Beneath? That is it? The one in Paris where it shows Paris. It's like the catacombs underneath or something like that. Yeah. I got a lot of that as above, so below symbolism, and throughout this entire film. And just while I'm on that, I noticed the logo of the company that made this, Temple Hill. In the center there is two pyramids with a capstone, as above, so below. It's a mirrored image, so you can put a line straight through the middle, and you've got basically a pyramid there with with the capstone. But also, these are actually alchemical symbols. If you just type in alchemy, elements, you'll find it's like earth and fire or something like that. That's what these represent, the air and fire. So I think that those are the ones. Do I have it here? Did I get it up on my?
I can look it up.
Yeah, alchemy.
Earth and fire alchemy. Let me see.
Just say elements alchemy, and I'm sure the picture.
Oh yeah, right here. Yeah. So that's the alchemical symbol for earth is one of them. So if you look at this, right here, this is the bottom part of the logo, is the alchemical symbol for earth, and I think This is for fire, the upside, the right side up one. So
There's a right side up one with a line through it as well.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Here we go. There's
air
Earth and
yeah.
air and Earth. Yep.
Which makes sense because they're always panning on landscapes where it's the sky and it's the land. They're always showing that scene when they're driving, for example, like the Shining style, driving through a forest scene. It pans to an upside down vision of that, and it's the ground and obviously the sky. And it does that like 3 times throughout the whole film, I think. Like, I think with each beat, it kind of starts with this upside down. So these guys clearly have something occult going on behind the scenes, and they're embedding it kind of throughout the whole film. I mean, the checkerboard floor was a bit on the nose. Come on.
Yeah.
But these are the other things that maybe slip past people.
Sure.
At one point, she walks through, it's either a therapist's door, who we were talking about earlier, or some door, and it's got a diamond where the light shines through on a black door, and it's basically their logo again. It's this, it's the pyramid, 2 pyramids interlocking, and that kind of runs throughout this as above, so below parallel, which again is often equated to spiritual matters. What happens in the spiritual also happens in the physical, and that's kind of what this whole film is playing off throughout the entire thing.
Well, you could say that's what's going on with the demonic possession, right? Is that's happening in the spiritual world, and we're seeing it in the physical world and explaining it as a physical mental illness. The DSM-5, as a Paranoid American pointed out to me on this show before, he's like, the DSM-5 gives you a list of symptoms. It doesn't tell you what causes them. We're just recognizing symptoms and giving them a name, but you could look at the exact same symptoms and say that's demonic possession. But because the DSM-5 isn't doing that, it's just cataloging symptoms and giving that group of symptoms a name. We've just kind of taken the spiritual aspect out of it.
Exactly. I agree. Get back to the party. I got another point here. You talk about color symbolism. So about this kid's party, aren't we? And she has the most outrageously wrapped colored gift out of all of them.
Yeah.
Like, she's got a yellow colored gift with black polka dots all over it. It's so ugly. It's horrible. And it's like, well, you don't wrap a kid's present in something like that. And it's dark. And it reminded me of the song Black and Gold for some reason. I know there's something occultic about that. I just can't. I think it's hive symbolism, like bees. There's something about hive minds or honey. It's something like that, isn't it? I know the bee, a big symbol. But not only that, it looks like a clown. Was something a clown would wear.
It definitely does. Yeah,
things
for
back
sure.
to my work that the Nephilim look like clowns, and I was like, is that a hint? Is that a nod? Is that what they're doing there?
It seems like it. And furthermore, yellow in this movie, I looked into it. Yellow represents death in this movie over and over and over again. So we've got the yellow gift wrap, which is very, stand out. The dead cat's in there. Every victim has got some yellow on them. The prison jumpsuit of the guy who murdered someone who was in that chain is yellow. She comes into Joel's apartment and for no reason at all says, I'm glad you got rid of that ugly yellow couch. It's just like...
Oh, she does, doesn't she?
Yeah, she's bringing up yellow a lot. The numbers on the house are also yellow. The 409, which, by the way, the only numerology that really showed up in this movie to me was 409. 4 plus 9 is 13. So you've got that unlucky number on the house. But yeah, yellow. Oh, the can of kerosene at the end is yellow as well. So every time you see yellow, it's kind of representing death.
One thing that I can think of off the top of my head is I made a video on Icor, which is the Greek gods, which was gold. But there's also that other thing that was going around about gold plasma. Or
gold juice. I did a whole episode on this. Yeah.
Maybe that was what it was about infusing the adrenaline into the blood thing. We all know about that, without trying to break the senses here. We're talking about stuff. It's hard to say, really, isn't it? But it
is hard to say. Yeah, maybe it is a reference to gold juice. I mean, that was one of those like weird things that Taryn Manning said that she seemed 100% serious about, and then everybody's like, "Shut the hell up!" And there was that like weird video that she did for Warner Brothers where she's like kind of saying they threatened me. Like she's almost openly saying Warner Brothers threatened me to shut up about the gold juice. So maybe that's a Hollywood ritual that we still don't fully understand that is being represented here.
Maybe. I mean, you have to remember as well, like this is the same company that made Twilight, who made this film, who produced this film, and that is about vampires. Don't they have like some kind of gold thing, or they glitter gold?
They glitter. I don't know if it's gold, but they like glitter. Yeah.
But this is a company that deals with demons quite frequently. I think one of their latest films is something like I've Become a Ghost or something like that.
I think you're right. Yeah.
You go on their website, you can see everything they've made over time, and it's kind of. Yeah, they're well into the death thing, and maybe most of the films might have yellow symbolism or gold going through. We have to look into that, but I don't know what the yellow means exactly. I'm sure someone will leave a wonderful numeric geometric breakdown of what
I hope
yellow
so.
represents.
I couldn't find anything other than it just seemed to represent death in this film. I tried to figure out, the mainstream kind of symbolism with the colors broke down basically this. Green was representing calming characters. Yellow represented death. Blue represented sadness. That's why Rose is always wearing blue. There's also this weird thing. I don't know if you noticed this, but in her house, you can see this painting on the wall very clearly. It's in the same place in the house, and you can kind of see what it is. And it's red. It's always red until she walks into her house towards the end of the movie, and on the table, there's a blue card that says last chance as she walks in. This is her last chance to do something about this demon, or it's going to lead to her death. And once she walks into her house, the paintings on her walls all become blue. Like they actually changed the paintings, which I found very interesting. Nobody brought that up. I went back and rewatched it just a few minutes ago before we started recording this to make sure I was not crazy. And yes, in the house, it's darker. It's darker when you see it in red, but it's very clearly not blue. It's very clearly red. And she comes in and everything's blue. So a lot of people have pointed that out. Her sister's always wearing pink. She's wearing blue. So they say it's sadness. Pink. I looked at a psychology website on the symbolism of pink, and it said something interesting. It said love, kindness, nurturing, and then ritual. Brought up ritual. So apparently, according to psychologists, using pink in movies is often done to represent ritual. It's one of those under talked about concepts that we relate pink to ritual, maybe because of things like Valentine's Day. I don't know, but like ritual is a thing that's associated with pink for some reason. I don't know. Maybe there's like a better explanation to the colors than I've come up with, but they're very clearly want you to see the colors. That's why it's so fascinating to me.
I think it's funny because you say, pink represents loving, nurturing, all those type of aspects, but the sister's always dressed in pink, and she's really bristly, harsh, uptight, kind of condescending, horrible personality type.
Yeah, and then the other places you see it, the other places you see pink are in the hospital. You see pink in that room with all of the Nephilim symbolism, which we'll talk about in a minute, all the clown symbolism. You see pink in the prison, and then you see pink on the sister who's kind of a bitch, to just put it lightly. Like, that's her character, right? So when people are saying, oh, the people who wear pink are nice, I'm like, I didn't get that at all from this movie. It's not that Rose wears blue because she's sad and her sister wears pink because she's happy. Her sister doesn't seem super happy. Her husband seems kind of weird and kind of a jerk, and he's wearing pink, so I don't know.
Well, I think the whole film is about inversion. They've inverted everything. The whole premise is based on the idea that something happy, like a smile, is evil now. You know what I mean? It's bad now. So I think they've played with that throughout the whole aspect. So maybe, like I said, normally pink would be associated with these aspects, but we're going to give them to the characters with the opposite aspects. And it added to that whole sense throughout the film of uncanny unnervingness that I think it was trying to give, because we instinctually associate these colors with things. You don't think about it. It's on a subconscious level. And when there's a dissonance, like purposely created dissonance between those two things, I think that creates that feeling in us of unease. And maybe that's what they were trying to do. Just a theory. I don't know.
I mean, they even said some of the upside down shots and other things like that were meant to mimic smiles and upside down smiles and things like that. This might be a stretch too, but the cat's name is Mustache, which is kind of like an upside down smile. If you think about it, I don't know. I thought it was weird that it was named Mustache, but
everything's to do with smiles.
Everything's to do with smiles, so Mustache would make sense. Yeah.
Well, at one point when she gets after this party, she breaks down, doesn't she? Because the cat gets discovered in the box where the train should have been.
Yep.
And this young boy is like pulling this dead cat out, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" And she starts breaking down, like, "Oh no, my cat's dead." That's all she cares about. My cat's dead. You know what I mean? And then she's like holding it and hugging it, and everyone's staring at her. And it's kind of like, I didn't do this, and then suddenly the main character, Laura, is there, who died at the start, who caused her to get the demon, is just sat there, just smiling and staring at her on one of the chairs. And it's like, does nobody see this? And she falls backwards because it's a cheap jump scare. She's suddenly there in front of her face, and she's like, and then falls over into glass. And then she cuts in and she's in hospital. And then she's staring at a chart, isn't she? Which has nothing but faces on it about your pain level. And no pain at all is a big smile.
And it's also blue, by the way. And then the pain at the bottom is red.
I think the scale is red to blue, exactly. Yeah, and I thought that was funny because everything is about smiling in this. Like everything around it has something to do with smiles. I think the boyfriend, the fiance, when he texts her, has a smiley face at the end of it. She's holding a mug at one point.
When she first texts him, it's like a little smirk, and then if you watch it by the end, when she's going crazy, it's like this huge, like crazy smile that a lot of people pointed out. Yeah.
Interesting. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, moving on the story, she ends up being psychiatrically evaluated, basically, doesn't she? And a boss turns up, and it's kind of like, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
what happened? And she's like, oh, how am I going to explain this one? It's kind of like, just when I thought I could get away and get back to work in a week, now I'm here covered in bandages and covered in blood. And I've killed my cat, apparently. The sister's out there arguing, you know what I mean? Like screaming with the fiance. This is that sense of like, this is where everything's falling apart at the seams now, isn't it? And she doesn't, at this point, really still know what to make of any of it. So it's kind of am I going crazy? What's wrong with me? What's happening here? Like, she doesn't quite know, does she?
And her only link then after this is to look at the professor, because what Laura said is, I watched my professor kill himself in front of me. Now I'm going to kill myself in front of you. So she's kind of starts tracing this back. And this is where she ends up at the professor's widow's house.
Yeah. Well, I think this is where she first confides in her boyfriend. It's like, something's happening to me. This thing's following me.
And he doesn't listen at all.
And he doesn't listen. He's like, nah, you're crazy. What is going on? I don't know how to deal with this. And he's like, he literally says, I cannot even right now. I'm just going to go. And he just leaves. And she's like, it's like, oh, maybe I went a bit too far. She's like, she's even she thinks, oh, that was a bit too crazy. I probably should have shut up there. You know, maybe
she was acting pretty insane in that scene, though. To be fair,
but if there was a way to tell somebody you're being stalked by a demon, that's like a textbook 101 class of what not to do, because they never do it right. I feel like if I was being demonically stalked by a smiling demon, I'd be able to explain it better to people in a way they could understand. But maybe I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Well, I mean, that's the interesting thing, though, right? Is we've taken away the vocabulary from people and the concepts from people, so when they're faced with these things, they have no idea how to deal with them, what to do, what the procedure would be, how to explain it, and then people don't have an idea how to understand it either. So I think vocabulary is an important thing. I think that this is why there's a language on words, or a war on words. I was trying to say language on words. But yeah, she goes to this house. She starts talking to Carla from Scrubs, and I noticed instantly. Let me see if I want to pull up this scene and kind of show it. When she goes into the room, this is one of those scenes where, for no reason at all, you could tell they put this pink film over the window, and you see this pink just pouring in, and Carla's character walks in and she's wearing blue. So they had to put this, even in this scene, it extends beyond the hospital, and on the wall we get all of this crazy kind of demonic clown symbolism. And I figured you probably had a fun time looking. Oh, look, she's even got like the pink necklace with the blue shirt. So, and
she's wearing green. What does that mean?
She's wearing green. Yeah, she's got it all. She's got it all. Maybe she's got yellow slippers on too. I didn't even notice. But
the thing is, she does show the entire range of emotions as a character.
She does.
She starts off quite calm and understanding, even helpful. It's like, because she asks it, it's kind of like, can you give me any details on what he was seeing? She's like, I can show you. Come with me, you know? And it's like, check out my husband's crazy room. And it's like, look at this thing here. And it's like, this is what he was. So she's actually been really helpful at the start. But after obviously seeing all these demonic jesters in the DMT realm, clown monster things, which are clearly the disembodied spirits of Nephilim, by the way, go to Amazon to check that out if you want to know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
But right there it is. Here it is in full color, and even show a jester on the wall.
Yeah,
there's an image of that.
I think I just showed that a second ago, right?
The famous Renaissance painting, and I think he's doing some kind of Freemasonic symbol with his two fingers together. The jester on the painting. People on my Telegram have been trying to decode what it means. We haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm pretty sure it's a one-eyed symbolism, Freemasonic hand sign, or something going on with that jester. Yeah. But I find it interesting. It starts with the jester, I think, and then it pans to the demons.
Right.
So again, is that another nod and a wink to the work I've been doing? It's like I'm wondering.
It almost seems like they've been watching your show or read your book. There it is, by the way, the one-eyed symbolism of the jester with the smile. Yeah.
I do think it's like, come on, did they watch my videos maybe in 2016 and they've just really ran with it? And probably not. I'm not saying that happened.
It's funny though, because watching this movie, I was watching this with my brother and I was like, oh my gosh, Paul Stobbs is gonna have a field day with this. I'm like watching this scene. I'm like, this is like his realm. It's almost like they watched your show and like ran with it.
He's wearing yellow, by the way.
He is wearing yellow. Yeah, symbolism of death.
This is a death room because it shows like people peeling the skin off and all sorts of things. He's drawn people tearing their heads in half, and it's generally just death, isn't it? It's just a room depicting.
Well, we've also got that bloody red smile right there. So,
yeah, exactly. So this is. if this isn't the media telling you the truth about demons, I don't know what is. This is what they looked like in real life. They were pale skin, big, wide serpent grins, big, huge, wild, crazy eyes. And it's kind of just quickly jumping to the end here. When we do encounter the demon, it's a giant. It's actually a giant, and it's all kind of hinted at through and through that, we're dealing with the real deal here. And it's kind of in that crazy room. That's where she starts to discover her links, isn't it? Back to, wait a minute, there's a pattern here. You're saying he saw this guy kill himself? They kept drawing the guy who killed himself, didn't he, in front of him? And it's kind of, what was his name? What's going on? She's like, wait a minute. What kind of reporter are you? You said you were a reporter? She's like, I'm seeing what he's seeing. She's like, get out of our house. She switches to like just manic screaming, get out of my house. Like, she goes through the whole.
Yeah, she really does. It was a great performance on her part, Judy Reyes' part, by the way. But yeah, I haven't seen her anything since Scrubs, so I just thought that was interesting.
Me either. That's the first thing I saw, honestly. As soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, that's the one from Scrubs.
I was like, oh man, does this mean Turk killed himself? So yeah. No, she did a great job. There's so much. I'm trying not to jump ahead too much. If there was anything else I wanted to cover, I did have. Go ahead.
I've got a few things. So,
because I want to talk about that demon at the end, but we can get back to that.
While we're in that room,
yes,
I called it Hammerface Wife. That's what I called Carla because I didn't know what her name was. Because that's how the professor killed himself. He repeatedly bludgeoned himself in the face with a hammer with a smile on his face. Right. And that's what Laura saw, which made her get the trauma thing. And then it transferred when she killed herself in the psychiatrist's office to the main protagonist. So it's kind of, this is the chain being discovered, isn't it?
Right.
But she said, the wife said, he kept saying it was trying to get inside of him. So it's the first link to this is all about possession. And it's as though it's following the true pattern of how it actually works in real life. Demons don't possess people easily. They can oppress you, but you have to kind of let them in somehow.
Exactly.
And it seems like the often game the media shows is trauma and fear allows you to become possessed. And actually that bears a lot of reality to like how shamanism works. And this is something I made note here because even in the beginning, Laura's saying, the first victim is saying, it looks like other people, like masks. She specifically points out it's like masks, And in real life, cultures who have folk traditions where they channel the spirits of the ancestors. Channeling is just a colloquial term for being possessed by spirits. That's basically what it is. They channel and they let the spirit talk through them, Well, they often wear masks to achieve that goal in real life. They wear masks that represent the spirit in the spirit realm they're trying to mirror. And if you look like something in the spirit realm, you create a channel to it. And I thought this whole film is just constantly telling you how it works. Like they are mentioning it. When she says, he kept saying it was trying to get inside of him. And then we're talking about trauma throughout all this. The demon's method to get into the person in this film is trauma. That's what it does. He gets stronger by generating fear. Well, if you look at, like, say, Korean shamanism, and it's quite a mainstream, modern, still practiced today thing. It's like an ancient folk tradition of South Korea. They have these things called madangs. Now, madangs are actually paid by rich families to come and do rituals in their homes to get rid of bad energy, get rid of bad spirits. And also, sometimes it's simply just to communicate with spirits to get information, get knowledge. And it's quite simple that they pay somebody to come and do that for them. But madangs are predominantly mainly women in South Korea. There are a few men, and they'll tell you not one of them chose to be a madang. They all suffered extreme, can't come back from it trauma.
Right.
And then from that day forth, they were visited by demons, or gods, as they call them, and they kept communicating with them and telling them where to go. And they end up meeting up with another madang who then takes them under their wing and trains them to utilize these newly gained spiritual gifts through the trauma. It's like, now you've suffered trauma, you can see spirits. Is what basically it says. And now you have to be a channel for them. And it's kind of your calling. You've been called out by the spirits to work with this particular pantheon of gods, and you're like the channel for them on the earth. And it's like they've picked you especially, and it's kind of, oh, how kind of them to let me watch my daughter brutally die in front of me, so I get to be a channel for them. It's that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
It reminds me of, and I'm forgetting the name of one of these because there's two different takes on basically the same thing. One is the Skinwalker, and then one is, what's the other one called? It's like the Skinwalker. But either way, one of them, in either case, it's trauma. It's either trauma that happened to you as one of them. And I can't remember if that's the Skinwalker or the, man, I feel like an idiot. Somebody in the comments is going to be so mad at me right now. And one of them has to actively traumatize others, which is brought up in this movie, right? Is the next scene after this, after they start piecing it together, is how do you break the cycle? And what they find out is you can either kill yourself and pass it on, or you can kill someone else and pass it on that way. And it is going to drive me nuts. Skinwalker. There's.
If we move on from that,
it'll come back to me.
It'll come back to you, and you just scream it out when it comes back to you. Okay, that's fine. But yes, the whole film is about the cycle of trauma continuing the possession cycle. But they said you could either you kill yourself in front of somebody, and then they witness it. They're traumatized, and now the demon can transfer because you've opened a portal.
Wendigo.
No, Wendigo. That's
what I was trying to think of. The Skinwalker and the Wendigo. One of them is they do the trauma to others, and one of them is they have the trauma happen to them. Is another way of putting it, that they become demon possessed. But yes, sorry. Yeah. Continue with.
That's kind of what happens in here, because it's either you do the trauma to yourself and pass it on, or you murder somebody in front of somebody else.
And give that trauma to them. Yeah.
And then you're free then. The demon will jump to the fresh traumatized victim, and somebody's died, so he's happy kind of thing. It's basically, if you want to appease the demon, you need to sacrifice something. You need to sacrifice somebody. And that's actually a really common trope as well. Like in, I think, the 2016 film Clown was specifically about a man who puts on a clown costume. Turns out he's put on the skin of an ancient Scandinavian demon called a cloyne, and now he's transforming into the demon and can't take the costume off. But the trick is, if you want to get free of the costume, you've got to eat 5 children. So you got to sacrifice, and you'll be free of this. Or you die. It's like one or the other, isn't it? It's kind of, what are you going to do? How much do you value your own life over others? And it's funny because she does learn this, doesn't she?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Is she gets a lot of people have talked about the ending as being a 3-part ending. That it basically, you see each version of how to escape this, and she does all of them. The first ending is, well, what if I pass it on? And we get this whole scene where she goes to the hospital and she kills Carl. And I was like, I knew that's what was going to happen next. I was like, is this really how they're going to do this? Is like the hero of this movie going to be like, you know what? This poor guy who's been saying somebody's going to kill him, dream come true. I'm going to go and kill this guy. And I was like, this just seems out of character for her. And that was
does it though? Because I think there's something to be said that she's a therapist, and even she considers Carl's life less valuable than another's.
Right. Yeah.
Even she judges him to be insane, and it's like,
well, I shouldn't say out of character. What I meant to say is, I feel like it would be, it would be a hard sell to the audience. Is more of what I was thinking.
I think it's sad that she chose Carl with the prejudice that, well, he's a lunatic, so it's okay if we kill him. I'm actually doing him a favor, Even she believes, and by the way, she has more in common with Carl than any other character.
Yep.
Even she can't see the mirror being held up there and thinks he's less valuable and therefore shouldn't be listened to, and let's just kill him. And
which is supposed to be the point of her job, right? Is that she doesn't see these people this way, that she wants to help them. But you're right, she sees Carl as not really human. Yeah. Yeah,
it's like he's less than you. What's the point? Like, he has a crap existence. He's insane. If I'm going to kill anybody, it may as well be him. It's kind of, that's sad, really, when you think about it. Even the therapist who's currently dealing with demons and having all the same symptoms as Carl still doesn't see that he's a human being. She's still judging him.
Yeah,
as less than human and worthy of death. And I think maybe that was the point of the scene. Maybe, I don't know. But her boss walks in, is the one who witnesses it, and he's like screaming, like, "Oh God, oh no, oh no!" And then he peels his face off.
Yeah,
where did that come from? And that's when you're like, and then that's when you're like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't right, because she's like stabbing Carl repeatedly, and he's laughing and smiling. She's like, wait a minute, you're peeling your face off. It's kind of, hang on, then bang, she's back in the car again. It's kind of like it was all a dream. It was a dream fake out scene. Right. There we go.
Right. And what's interesting, though, is like, was it a dream, though? Because one of the things, and I haven't watched the second movie, but essentially it goes further into the idea that if you want to do something, and the demon doesn't want you to, it will make you think you're doing it, so create an illusion. So there's definitely a question there of whether or not she actually was trying to kill Carl and realized the demon wouldn't let her get out that way. So that is another theory that's happening here, is that she went through this whole thing and then she wakes up in her car. She's like, okay, well, if I try that, it's just going to come up as an illusion. It won't let me do this. So that was one ending, right? And the second ending is that she goes and defeats her past trauma. This is the good ending that we're like, okay, we got that really poor look at Rose, and we're kind of questioning now, like, what's actually going on inside of her head and what's going on inside of her heart, and is she actually kind of a terrible person? She travels to house 409. Like I said, yellow letters, 409 equals 13. And here's something very interesting here. It's some other occult symbolism that I found is this is the only time where she's not wearing blue, I think. She's wearing gray. She's wearing a gray hoodie, and she goes into the garage and she finds a lantern. And one of the things, one of the symbolism that I found representing that is actually the Hermit card in tarot. And the Hermit card is about basically self, where did I put this in my notes? It represents looking for answers within. So at this point in the movie, she's still trying to look for answers within. Again, nobody in this movie is pointing out, hey, maybe get a priest or an exorcist or do something that would actually scare this demon away. But instead she's like, well, if I just look within, deal with my own self-trauma, this will solve it. So she becomes the hermit character from the tarot deck in this. And there's some deeper symbolism here with the demon itself that I was watching. I never suggest doing this, but I do this often for the show, as I'm like on Witch Talk is what I call it. You know, the part of TikTok where all the Wiccan people are analyzing stuff. And they're like, and they always say it in like a positive way. They're like, oh, the sleep demon at the end of this movie, it was just like this one demon and it was kind of like this other demon or whatever. It was just kind of weird. I thought it was too strange. I don't know. Witch Talk is a terrible, terrible place.
You should see my Instagram feed.
I don't know it's awful.
I don't know what I've done to deserve the algorithm what the algorithm has gifted me, but it is content fuel. I'm not going to lie. The stuff they're showing me is it's witch talk and the rest. It's kind of, you don't realize just how many unhinged lunatics there are out there until you get into that.
They always have like purple or blue hair too. So
it's not even like a political thing. I mean, I'm getting the lunatics, the ones who this film is probably really talking about. You know,
well, that's how you know they're lunatics. Though, is they're looking at this and it's like they're in awe of and praising the demon. I'm like, the demon that like made 37 people commit suicide. Like that's your hero.
Well, they then go on to say, because it's a reflection of mankind's shadow, it's not really a demon. It's kind of like, what kind of witch are you if you don't think demons are real?
Not a very good witch, apparently.
Not a very good one.
No.
The thing is, you're talking about, she stabs Carl and suddenly she's back in the car again.
Right.
That's throughout the entire film. That happens to her a lot.
Yes.
Like things happen. And then it's like she gets a phone call, answers it. It's a therapist talking to her.
Yeah, there we go. I forgot that scene was in this one as well. So it shows that possibility. Yeah.
But it's like, well, hang on, I'm already talking to my therapist. And there she is, it's like laughing at her. Or another scene, is it like...
I thought the cat scene was going to be that. I thought there was going to be like, oh, she didn't really kill the cat. I was shocked and was like, oh, the cat's really dead. But yeah.
It's like, oh, the alarm goes off, doesn't it? And then she talks to the alarm people.
So her mom's voice on the other end of the phone, I think, right?
Is that what it is?
Sorry. We're thinking of two different things. I was thinking when she's in the bedroom, she does hear her mom's voice at some point. There's a couple of times throughout the film where you can hear it.
Oh, yeah.
The recording is one coming out of her bathroom. But you're right. She's talking to the alarm people and he's like, turn around, look behind you. And that didn't really happen.
It's like, are you alone in the house? I think so. Are you sure?
Yeah,
it's all weird. You know?
Yep.
It's like, but this is the thing. It's kind of I'm confused about the nature of this demon because the door was open,
right?
Sliding door. How did it do that? Because it was at this point, it's still like a spiritual aspect, and this is where the film falls apart.
Is
a little
it a
bit.
poltergeist or is it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's that lines being blurred. It's like so no one can see the demon. Because at the beginning she's screaming, it's here, and no one can see it, and she cuts the neck and everything. It's kind of, but it can open doors. It's like, hang on, what is this? Like,
well,
so this is where
think that's the question, though, right? Because with the cat as well, like, is it a poltergeist or is it at this point, is she already being influenced enough by the demon that she's opening the door and setting off the alarm, that she's killing the cat and putting it in the box? I wonder if that's the question, but you're right, it does kind of blur the lines there.
Well, I think there's a lot of lost time as well.
There is.
Because there's sudden scene changes where she's suddenly just wandering in the street.
Yeah.
After she closes the door and turns the light off, for example, and hears her mum's voice, and suddenly she's wandering in the street and almost gets hit by a car. And it's kind of like, did she actually lose time there? And in that time, is that where she could actually have done some horrible things?
In that time, she went and started a fight club, is what actually happened.
There you go. But at the same time, it's kind of like she hasn't been possessed yet.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Is it possible she actually does have mental issues as well as being demonically attacked, and she actually may be doing these things and does have a...
It's like I said at the beginning of the film, she already seems kind of unhinged. Like, she looks tired. She seems kind of... I mean, I think that's why it chooses her to some degree, is because she's already kind of nuts. Like, she's already hiding.
I think it does say that to her at the end, doesn't it? It says something along the lines of, like, your mind was just so inviting.
Well, and because it was it does say that. And I think the reason it's inviting is what we're dealing with at the end here, is that she witnessed her mom kill herself as a child. So she's got that trauma. In that scene where she's talking to the therapist is like, I don't know if I want to give you drugs. We should probably talk about that time you saw your mom kill herself. And she's like, nope. I'm, not dealing with that. I'm 40 or whatever age I am, and that's not how I'm going to do things. So she definitely has a lot of unresolved trauma that she is acting as a doorway, acting as an invitation for the spirit. Like it says, you were so inviting. And that's where we get this third ending, which is that Rose eventually succumbs to the trauma. And this is the crappy ending that nobody wanted. But there's a lot of theories on why it ends this way. Some people say that it's a representation of, that even if you can deal with your own trauma, that it doesn't change the societal trauma or whatever meta narrative.
I don't know.
I'm just throwing out what people are saying. I don't believe that one. Other people are like, she couldn't. Some mental illness is beyond her. I'm looking at this as a Christian, going like, well, it's obvious to me. Like, she's trying to play the hermit tarot card. She's trying to look within, and the answers are not within. Like, that was a very clear ending to me.
Before we get to the third ending, obviously, just to finalize the second ending, where she does end up like facing her mother, doesn't she?
Mm-hmm. Oh yes, I did want to talk about this. Yeah,
it's the demon pretending to be her mother anyway. But I don't know what her game is at this point. Does she legitimately think she's talking to the ghost of her deceased mother, or is she not clued in by this point that she's being messed with? Because like, why go to the house? She should be, right? She should be clued in that this thing can act like anyone. It's not actually her dead mom. Well, and that's another common trope in reality as well when it comes to demons. They always say, if you ever dream of dead relatives, never take food from them. That's a common thing I hear quite a lot. Or never drink, because you're making a contract. If you break bread with a demon, you're making a covenant. Yeah, so Vicky Johansson was explaining that one to me. It was quite interesting.
I think I talked to her about that as well.
I'd had my own dream in the past where I encountered the Hat Man, like a nefarious, horrible shadow entity type character. And in my dream, it started with me in a park, and my dead relatives were there having a tea party of sorts with cake and everything else, and they had a spread out, and and they told me to come and join them, and I did, and I drank the tea, you know what I mean? And then immediately I got a phone call, and the voice on the other end told me, I've not forgot about our previous conversation. I'm coming for you now. And then suddenly all my dead relatives are gone, and the Hat Man's coming over the horizon. And it's kind of like I had that dream like 10 years ago, and then Vicky Johansson tells me, oh yeah, eating things in dreams makes a covenant with demons, right? I'm like, and now somebody tells me.
But that's exactly the thing, right? Is we don't know these things, so this is why people are susceptible to these things. Sorry, I'm not trying to jump all over the place, but since you brought up Vicky Johansson, since you brought up sleep demons, I have to point out that the short film Laura Hasn't Slept, in that one, it's very clearly a sleep demon. She goes to a therapist, and she's talking to the therapist, and the therapist does that thing like the phone call with the police. It's like, are you sure you're in the therapist's office? Do you know who I am? And she's like, oh shit, I'm realizing now that I'm in a dream. She's trying to avoid sleeping in this movie, Freddy Krueger almost type thing, because she realizes the next time she sleeps, this demon is coming for her. And to link this back to Smile, one of the characters that instantly came to my mind, because I've read the Mothman prophecies and stuff like that, is this character Indrid Cold. I'm sure you're familiar with Indrid Cold, but he's known as the Smiling Man. If you read the Mothman prophecies, he's showing up in people's houses like a sleep paralysis demon, like the Hat Man. So I wondered if there was a connection there, if anything that had to do with Indrid Cold, but it definitely, that thing came to my mind, is that one of the things that's not really explored in Smile a lot, but maybe you're right with the missing time, it is actually, is the idea this is a sleep paralysis demon.
Maybe. Who honestly knows? I mean, when it comes to Ingrid Cole, I mean, he has all the markers of a Nephilim right there.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? That is a Rakshasa demon if I've ever seen one from India. You know what I mean? Just a modern. He's just wearing a modern Gucci trench coat instead of.
He wears green in a lot of the stories too, which I noticed. So I don't know if that's a reference to the green in the movie.
Who knows? But it's one thing about sleep demons I've noticed, and even Ingrid Cole's a good example. And I only say this because someone close to me was telling me their dream, and they were saying, I think a demon was in my dream. and they were saying it was their mother, and they were like, but it wasn't my mum. It was pale. It was like a facsimile of my mother, and she was smiling, and it was really creepy stuff. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, and all I could think is that just off my own work, it's like, can the Nephilim put on a mask like they're your loved ones, but they can't hide like the reality of them. They still have that wide mouth that's unnatural. They still have the pale skin, but it's like they've shape shifted within that form to something. And I've had it myself, something similar. Years ago, I remember dreaming about seeing one of my best friends, but it wasn't him, and he was looking up at me at the top of some stairs and started pointing down at me, you know, like that type of thing, like looking dead in the eyes. But I was looking at him, and I was like, something off about you there, and, you know, but because it was one of those lucid dreams. As far as I was aware, it was completely real up until that point. And then I knew I was in a dream, and the dread seeped in because it was uncanny. He looked uncanny, you know. And again, I think Ingrid Cole plays on that. A lot of sleep demons play on this uncanniness to them, which clowns often offer with the same thing. This make-up face that's hiding the true emotion, the fake smile, you know. And we have to remember as well, in terms of the Nephilim were predators, which is what by the way, just for context, demons are the disembodied spirits of Nephilim. We figured that out. Okay?
Right. Agreed on this. Yeah. For anybody who's not caught up on that. Yeah.
Sure. So if these things are something to do with Nephilim in some way, and everything's like a predator trait, these things used to eat us. We were prey to them. Well, baring your teeth is a threatening sign. Like chimps, will attack you if you bare your teeth at them because they see it as aggression. You know, it's a sign of, to hide your teeth is submission. And obviously smiling is grinning your teeth as much as you can, especially when you're doing it with malice and you're staring someone dead in the eyes without blinking. That's just something terrifying and predatory about that, shall we say. Right. You know, and I think that's another nod and a wink and like a hint to the nature of these things. Like they were natural predators at some point. So I don't know. There's a few ideas.
No, there's a lot of ideas. I have another one I want to throw out here since we're talking about the mother. So one of the things that's interesting is the mother. You already kind of pointed out it's not really her mom. It's this demon that's disguised as her mom. But some of the things that I'm trying to explain how I got here. So let me put it this way. Going back to the color thing, I had another theory earlier on. I was going to save it for this part. When I was watching the movie, I kept thinking to myself, there's no way that Hollywood's actually saying this. But if I was going to interpret the movie on what I thought it actually meant, I would think that this was a commentary on the transgender thing. Right? We've got the exact yellow and blue of the transgender flag. Then we've got suicidal ideation, right? And in my mind, it's just like, is this movie, I mean, even with the yellow symbolism on the birthday present, I was like, well, that's what you paint a room when you don't know what the gender of the baby's going to be. You've got this one who clearly wants to have kids and all this pink and blue symbolism, and suicide is like 50% amongst transgenders and stuff like that. I'm like, is there something there? And when you get to the mother scene, I noticed a lot of people were pointing out, at least one article I read from someone was saying, hey, I think this movie's actually about a trans character, and that the mom it literally goes from the mother to this male character, like slowly like morphing and stuff like that. So I highly doubt that Hollywood's actually making a movie that's saying, hey, you know what? The problem in the mental health industry is that we're giving drugs to people who are being demonized, and then they're killing themselves. So like the whole transgender agenda. So I don't think Hollywood would actually say that, but it definitely like that would be what I would think was being said if I didn't know who was making it.
Honestly, so. I mean, it could be that the person who made this wants to try and get that message out, but doesn't know how to do that.
He did it. If he did, he did it subtly enough that no one caught on enough to like block this movie from being made, because I also think this happened with my favorite video game, Death Stranding, is one of those things that's very clear pro-life message at the end that was like, how did it get past Hollywood? Even The Mandalorian seemed to have a very clear pro-life message, which was odd from something coming from Disney of all places. So this could have been that, I don't know, but
they've got to play both sides, don't forget. They have to.
That's true. And it's also like it's also duality, right? I mean, even if the transgender stuff is put in there, it's further to the whole duality concept. But
well, I think in Freemasonry, if it's not black and white, it's red and blue. That's how they do show. That's how they show duality. It's one or the other, and obviously we know that through politics.
So red lodge, blue lodge, black lodge, white lodge, exactly.
So all white hats, black hats. It's always red versus blue or black versus white. It's just another duality symbol, and I think every person or every what do you call them, subgroups or something like that, or closed off societies, let's say like the transgender group, a big umbrella comes under many umbrellas and other terms. I think they'll have to make media in some way that appeals to everybody. Like I said, the Christian spiritual perspective is way underrepresented in this film, as we mentioned earlier, but maybe this wasn't for us. We're not we have our own stuff, you know what I mean? And maybe this is for them, and maybe these things are led there to kind of continue the conversation, to make it prevalent in people's minds that the big struggle today is these people's freedom, and it's kind of like the medical industry doesn't deal with them correctly. We need to find the right way to help these people, and it's probably not to talk them out of mutilating themselves. It's how can we make them do it safely? It's kind of the solution.
And I'm just reading it from like how I understand these things, or reading into what I understand these things. So when I see this movie, I think, okay, this seems like a condemnation on just giving people pills, right? And it seems like a condemnation on, putting a career first instead of a family. It seems like a condemnation on chopping your body up instead of talking to someone. It seems like a condemnation on the idea that everything can be solved with we're just chemical sets that need to be tweaked with drugs, and that actually there's a spiritual aspect to it. And maybe that's just me reading into it, but it felt like all of it was there. And it's one of those things that maybe it all is there, and maybe that's just like some interpretation things. But like those are the things that I took away from it.
We have to wonder if it's subconscious, because are these people that smart that they could put all of these symbols in one movie?
Well, that's my other thought is like, I wonder if they don't even realize that they're doing it, but it's just coming through because, when you tell a good story, and I've brought this up a lot of times, when you tell a good story, I'm not even saying like Smile's like this amazing story or whatever. It's kind of a story that's been done before. But when you want to tell any kind of story, it has to have truth or it doesn't resonate with people. And the truth is inconvenient to the demonic agenda. You know what I mean? Truth is always going to point you towards something that I don't think that Hollywood actually wants you to see. So I think that truth seeps in just because the writer's trying to tell something that you will resonate to. And if you resonate to it, it's because it's telling you something that's true.
Well, maybe it's something spiritual as well. Maybe like things do just come through, because every piece of artwork has a spirit behind it, I believe. It's channeled from somewhere. If it's not the Holy Spirit, it's something else.
The muses or something, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, art is one of those things I've tried to talk about to no end philosophically on my channel. And it is one of those, who can know truly the inspiration for some of the things that get created. And is every single thing corrupt that comes out of the media, or can there be some good in some of these messages, or is it all just programming to make us
and I think that's true. And that's why I as much as I have that bent and that bias towards it, it's coming from Hollywood, it has to be evil. I do have to pause sometimes and go like, but man, like when I finished when I finished playing Death Stranding, that was the most pro-life message I've ever seen ever anywhere. And it was touching. And it was the same with The Mandalorian. It felt like a very pro-life message. And this, to me, at least the way I saw it, it felt like a very good message in at least some aspects of like, hey, maybe there's a spiritual aspect going on here with the mental health crisis. Maybe pushing drugs on people and transgender mutilation is not the answer. At least that's what I took away from it.
Maybe that's all about the externalization of the hierarchy. Maybe they want people to start questioning the scientific method and start getting a bit more spiritual. And films like this are easing people into that concept. You're not crazy. It really is a spiritual aspect. You really do have a demon. Maybe these films are serving that purpose to normalize the spiritual in preparation for the new age religion, for the new world order.
I think you're exactly right. I've been saying this for years. I think atheism is going away, and now they're introducing spiritual concepts to people. As long as those spiritual concepts lead to an occult understanding and not a Christian understanding, not an understanding where you submit to God, but an understanding where you're looking for your own personal, demonic attachments.
Well, I suppose people would watch this movie, wouldn't they? And they think like, how would I have beat the smile demon? You know, how would I have? And other people said I would have integrated the demon into me instead, or something like that. Or it's kind of like you've got to do the shadow work. You got to work with your demons in order to make them one with yourself to create a holistic person, and then you can.
That's definitely what Witch Talk thinks about this movie from having watched Witch Talk on it. Yeah,
that's just the generic New Age Gnostic nonsense answer which you get nowadays, which is what the programming is trying to teach people. Because, like I said, not one mention through this entire film at all about Christian spiritual warfare, and Christians have been dealing with demons,
a trope in all of horror movies forever, right? Even if the horror movie's like not a pro-Christian movie, there's a Catholic character, there's a priest, there's some concept, a cross on a wall, something. This was like devoid of Christianity in a almost strange way. And I'm not trying to make, like, oh, I need to be represented, and I get, but it did feel weird for a horror movie, which is normally dealing with these supernatural religious elements. There's always, even if it's a bad connotation towards Christians, it's in there somewhere. Just, it felt weird that it wasn't there at all with this.
It's always usually the corrupt, useless Catholic priest.
That's not what it is, but this didn't even have that. Yeah.
I mean, I know. At least give me the useless Catholic priest,
right, exactly.
rather than the realistic. Just use the power of Jesus' name and your authority given to you through his sacrifice to cast these demons.
Well, they would never put that in a movie for sure.
This is the truth, the simple truth. And it's just kind of because if people knew that immediately, imagine like that therapist was a Christian, and Laura comes in and says, "This thing's following me." It's like, I believe you. Let's pray. The film will be over in 5 minutes. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, and therefore the curse was broken. The demon was cast back into the dry places, and Laura lived a happy life.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. That's basically how it would have ended.
That's how it would have ended. Yeah,
there's not much of a film then, is it?
No.
So you got to draw it out. But towards the end, like I said, she confronts her mother. Her mother becomes this giant, smiling, pale clown monster thing. Like a thing is the only way to describe it because it seems genderless. It's something else.
Exactly.
But this is where. This is what happens all the time with movies that deal with spiritual concepts. They turn the demon into like a physical man-eating monster of some kind, and it loses its fear factor for me when that happens.
100%.
It was
scary.
stopped being
when it was scary at that point.
Yeah, yep. It was tacky. It's tacky is the feeling I got from that. And the monster was masking like her mother a little bit in that scene still, and you think that wasn't its true form, but it still had the smile look to it. And it's kind of like she kills it with fire, and it's kind of, as soon as I saw that, I was like, that demon's not dead. You don't kill demons.
Unfortunately, American cinema has ruined the Great British Ghost Story, and we don't know how to tell them here, so we always have to like show things, and it's like that's not a ghost story. It's not terrifying anymore. Like the unknown, the unseen is scarier than a guy with a chainsaw, and it's definitely scarier than a Russian multi-jawed doll thing, that whatever that thing was, genderless Russian stacking doll.
I think they played the trope, didn't they, of, okay, so let's turn it into a physical monster you can kill with guns and fire then.
Right.
So they did this, so that was the second ending, wasn't it? So the first ending was man-made horrors not beyond human comprehension. Let's murder somebody in front of somebody else and solve this in a physical way. Okay, then the second one was, let's kill the demon in a physical sense. Let's just kill it. Let's kill it
with fire.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Kill it with burn it, and they played that out. And she was like, I now have killed the symbolic shadow representation of my trauma through my mother, and I am now free from that trauma mentally and can finally move on now the house is gone. It's kind of, that was the therapist exposure therapy excuse ending, wasn't it? The therapist ending. But it's kind of, again, you've personified the demon now into a physical monster. But then that plays out because she ends up going to her ex-boyfriend's house, who's now wearing red, I believe, if I remember correctly. Was he wearing red?
Can't remember, but he's definitely not wearing green. I think he's wearing red.
I think he was wearing pink and red. Now you mention it. It's going to kill me that we don't know.
I'm looking this up while you're talking.
We're going to have to find out. But just a memory, I swear he was wearing red.
I'm going to find it while you're talking, so keep going. Yep.
Anyway, so there he is, and she comes and confesses to him, doesn't she? It's like, I treated you terribly. I left you for no reason, just because of my own messed up trauma. You were breaking down barriers I had put up to protect myself, and it was unfair of me to just leave. And she's like, I'm sorry. Could I please just stay here tonight? All I need is somewhere to sleep. I need help. I just want to sleep. He's
actually wearing like gray or white. I don't know. It's a little dark in this scene. Let's see if I can go back and... Yeah, it's kind of like a white sweater.
Ah, right.
Okay.
So he's just Okay, there you go. I don't know why I saw red. In my mind, I have red. I don't know.
It's all good. Because there's so much red in this movie anyway.
But she's like confesses everything to him, and he's like, "Don't worry, I'll always be with you." And then he starts smiling horribly, and it's kind of, and she realizes, "Oh no, it's happening again." And she's back in the house, and it's done. It's done. Like she didn't do anything. She didn't kill the monster physically, and now it's become like a reality. It's like the giant's in front of her again. But this time it's kind of that what happened to Laura happens to her.
Exactly.
She just breaks down. This thing is undefeatable. You can't kill it with fire because it's not even physical. It's not even a physical monster. She might be able to see it, but she can't hurt it. It's not there in her realm where she is currently. Mm-hmm. It wants to get into our realm, which is what demons really do in real life. They're not actually... Most people don't... Although it can happen with the use of usually drugs and things like trauma, most people don't see demons. That's not how it works, But the Hollywood kind of always does this. They play these tropes out. It's either the wispy, shadowy black thing or the man-eating monster, or they have these many ideas of what a demon is. But the reality is the hidden forces beyond our perception, But in this film, they turn it into like it goes in through her mouth type of thing. It like rips off its skin, and it's this multi-mouth grinning flesh monster of some kind. Like, I don't know what you'd call it. I don't know. It's like I was saying, it's like a Russian nesting doll. I think some of the belief in that is that every time it consumes someone, it's just growing. Like they're just a part of it now. It's conglomeration. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. But it looked tacky. It looked like a Cronenberg.
It looked awful.
It looked bad. It looked really bad. Yeah. It lost all fear factor. And what does it do? It like puts like a finger in her mouth and like pulls it open a little bit.
That looked really weird too, by the way. I don't know.
Badly done. Really badly done. I didn't like that. And it had a very Ring element to it because they always died with their jaw really wide, didn't they, as well? So maybe there was a throwback to that in some way. I don't know. But it literally starts like putting its head in her mouth. And then it cuts to Joel kind of running to the door, doesn't it? Yeah. And he breaks in because he suddenly turns up, doesn't he? And she's like, "Oh no, why are you here?"
Because her other thought was that if she could kill herself without anybody seeing it, it would defeat the demon. Yeah. So.
Well, she certainly didn't do a very good job of that. No. And so she runs back in, doesn't she? And that's where she dies, basically, because it's kind of, and this thing possesses her, and it took like her will being broken down through 3 repeated attempts at trying to defeat this thing and failing miserably every time, stuck in a loop. Like, she doesn't even know what is or isn't real anymore.
Right.
Like, she can't define reality anymore. She doesn't know any of her actions are her own, or if she's dreaming or whatever it is. She just has no idea. So she just gives up. Mm-hmm. And that's it. The demon's then in her, and she's smiling. Joel then witnesses her set herself on fire. And that's it. That's the film. It's just end scene, isn't it?
It also ends interesting because I was saying it has that like 1950s throwback at times, and it ends with the song "Lollipop." And I looked into this, and that apparently is on set what they nicknamed the demon. They nicknamed it Lollipop for some reason.
Ah, that's weird.
So I have no idea why. I couldn't find anything that like made that make sense. Or it was just like a joke on set or whatever. But that's what they called it. So they ended the movie with the song "Lollipop," and then it's just done.
Amazing. Is it a PDF file reference, perhaps?
PDF file? Yeah, maybe. Well, yeah, maybe. I was wondering that myself too.
On the 50s riff, you just reminded me. After she tells her fiance everything, and he's like, "Nah, you crazy," and then just walks off. She drives to a 1950s blue and pink neon lit up diner.
She does. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she sat outside of it, like just eating this burger viciously, like really violently.
Oh, and that scene is so blue and pink. I mean, that actually in the whole movie is probably the most washed out a scene has been in those 2 colors. And that's saying a lot because the whole movie's full of it. I noticed even when they're driving at one point, all the car lights, like they used filters on the camera to make the brake lights look that same exact shade of pink, to make the headlights look a certain type of blue. It was just weird how much it was in the movie.
Well, one thing I was thinking about, and it kind of came to me at the end here as we were talking, we're describing these people who swear there are people out there staring at them, smiling at them, and it's like they look like people, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like they pretend they're wearing the masks of other people, and they're just stalking me. It's kind of what's going on. And that's what happens to her throughout the whole film. It's like she talks to her sister, has an argument, and then she sits in her car and starts screaming. And then her sister comes out the house and walks up to the door. You're watching this happening, And I'm like, here comes the jump scare. Lo and behold, she's like, oh, my sister. And then the head just drops down with a horrible smile,
I'm not going to lie. Like, not only did I see the jump scare coming a mile away, but it was like I almost laughed at it. It was so absurd and weird. It was, I don't know. Like, that's one of the scenes that the director's super proud of. And I was like, I wouldn't be that proud of it. It was kind of retarded.
There was this really old film I watched, and it wasn't it's called Hellraiser 5 Inferno. I don't know if you've seen it. Okay,
I've never seen.
I think it went like straight to Sci-Fi Channel. It was one of those type of, you know what I mean?
I don't know. I have no idea how many Hellraisers they've made, but I don't think they all went to theaters at this point.
I think they got up to like 9 now or something, and then the reboots kicked in. But of the old series, this was number 5, and it was like straight to DVD, straight to Sci-Fi. But I remember watching this B movie, and it scared me to the core. Like, it's the only horror film I've ever watched, and it probably wouldn't now. We wouldn't have the same. But I was quite young at the time, maybe 16, 15, again around that age, and I remember it psychologically terrifying me, and not one jump scare in the entire film. Not one jump scare. And most of the horror was through sound. You never saw what was happening to the victims. It was all happening behind a closed door as you saw the blood come under the door type of thing. But it's kind of like, that was more scary to me than any film that ever has a jump scare in it. And since then, I lose all respect for a film that has to try and scare me with a jump scare.
Sound design, sound design is what makes things terrifying. It's why I'm a big fan of the Silent Hill genre franchise, because they just, especially in the first 3 or 4, they just really got the sound design down. And there's things that are happening off screen because of the weird camera angles, and the sound just terrifies the crap out of you. So not being able to see it, adding with the sound is definitely scarier. This movie fell into the same trope that a lot of these movies are doing is, well, there's enough teenagers out there who, I haven't seen enough of these movies that they'll jump and they'll tell their friends and whatever.
Well, I just kind of reminded myself talking about it, but this is a lot like Hellraiser's method, the demons of Hellraiser in there. I don't know if you know much about the series.
I have never seen a Hellraiser film. My brother asked me this the other day, because he was asking me about horror films. I'm like, I don't know how. I've never seen one. So maybe I'll have to cover that on the show next.
It's the first 3 films. They're not great. Sure. They're not great, but for the time of what they were, they're horrifying. They're truly horrifying depictions of like gory deaths by demons, and hooks in skin type of stuff. And it's messed, but the lore behind it's interesting, because there's basically a magic box. It's a puzzle box. And if you come across the box and end up figuring it out, you've just opened a portal, and then demons will start gang stalking you, basically. And they'll start appearing around you, and you'll start seeing them places, and they'll get like closer and traumatize you, and they'll start blurring the lines between reality, and you'll start having things happen to you, then suddenly they weren't really happening, and it's kind of, was it a dream, was it real? It's exactly like Smile now I'm thinking about it. It's the same.
I gotta watch this now. This definitely sounds like something I could deep dive into some symbolism and stuff.
And it amalgamates with like these demons, the Cenobites as they're called, which the lore is they are people who opened the box because they wanted to feel the pain of being tortured. They gain pleasure from it. It crosses that boundary. And they basically get off on torturing people in a way, but they like judge them for their sins as they're doing it. It's kind of like, and the way they kill them is based off of how the person lived.
Okay. So like a Dante's Inferno kind of thing.
It's a judgment. It's like a divine judgment. They consider themselves like angels of judgment, you know what I mean? From this other dimension type of thing. And that's how they do it. And so it's really twisted and dark, but it always amalgamates in with the person dying who opened the box after a drawn out psychological traumatic stalking. And so what the point is, like, I see a lot of parallels in Smile as gang stalking. The phenomenon. I was
literally going to say gang stalking. Yeah.
It's there, isn't it? And it's kind of, that drives people to paranoid delusions. Is it real or not? Am I really being stalked here, or is this like what's going on? You know what I mean? I think
that's why it works, though, right? I mean, that's why the CIA and places like that use it, because it drives people crazy. It's an extreme form of gaslighting.
But I do wonder, like, this whole color coding everywhere. Like, do people who have experience with gang stalking, their lives end up including colors everywhere to try and traumatize them or trigger things, or like some kind of psychological thing going on? Do people who are being gang stalked suddenly end up seeing blue and red everywhere on purpose? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's
I know someone who is gang stalked, and I'm just now remembering. I'm gonna have to talk to them off. I'm not gonna say what it was, but like, I'm just remembering that they told me that they started hearing like 1950s music, like in their head.
I mean,
man, well, now I need to like call them and be like, hey, does any of this in Smile sound like your experience with gang stalking?
Well, the thing is about trauma as well. We know that the power elite families use trauma within the family. They traumatize their own children to break them, I think. And what I mentioned earlier about shamanism, it's a well-known fact that if you traumatize somebody, they open themselves up to the spirit realm. Maybe that's the whole point of why these families do it, why they torture their own children and traumatize them. It's so they can gain superpowers from their perspective.
Well, and I've also theorized myself based on some of Rob Skiba's work that maybe what else they're doing is they're trying to do what's the word? There's a type of gene that you need to activate by certain things, and that's that dormant Nephilim DNA that they're trying to activate through trauma. Is another theory. Yeah. So yeah.
Well, that would tie into a lot of there's old mysticism around Romania.
Epigenetics is what I was thinking of. Epigenetics, where there's certain genes that can be flipped on and off based on things that you do in your life.
Well, there's an old mythos in Romania of the Solomonar, and it's basically a wizard. Okay, it's a Romanian wizard, but the mythos is that this child's born and it's got like an odd film around it when it's born, and that's a sign that it has the potential to become a Solomonar. So it's usually because it has this odd membrane, they raise it and send it to basically the school of the devil, they call it. It's like witchcraft and wizardry school, and they train them to ride dragons, and they end up like they end up with like big wild red hair and red beards, and they're really pale and are really tall, and they're always shown like holding tablets like Moses with these odd druid robes on and stuff. And I do wonder, it's kind of like, are people of certain bloodlines chosen to go through the proper channels to activate their full potential? And it's kind of, this comes under the idea of trauma is one of those ways they must do it. It must be a way to activate these genes.
I think Laura Sanger's talked about this before too, as well, with survivors of stuff like this who have been around those families who are trying to activate specifically the dormant Nephilim DNA and things in it. So trauma is definitely a thing that shows up throughout all these things, as activating or opening portals or doorways to demons or activating things within yourself. Definitely shows up in this as well.
I think it's a common trope in film. Even Harry Potter had his parents die in front of him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Batman.
Which activated his
Batman.
his wizard powers, what activate. Yeah, it's all kind of, it's there, isn't it? There's something, and these films, it's kind of, I feel like
trauma unlocking superpowers. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like these films like Smile are just playing off these truths and fictionalizing it enough to make some money, but it's kind of at the same time, this film is just screaming a lot of things I've heard of and know of. Like, we're just talking here in the conspiracy world. It's kind of like, it's all kind of embedded into it. And you look into the background of the company Temple Hill that made this. First of all, Temple Hill, like,
right. Yeah. They're just kind of telling you the name, even without the symbolism. It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're talking like I think if I get to I'm on the website here, so I'll read to you the about section. It was founded in 2006, but the seeds of the company were planted long before, during the mid-90s, in a house on Temple Hill Drive. Just starting out in LA and the industry, roommates Marty Bowen and Wick Godfrey shared a love of movies, books, and whiskey over many late-night chats. Years later, Marty called Wick at 4 a.m. and said it was time for them to start a production company, and Temple Hill Entertainment was born. And it's kind of, what an innocuous, like, that's not how this company was born.
No.
What a nonsense story. It's kind of like, I just really love talking about films with my mate, and I decided one day at 4 a.m. to call him and said, let's make a production company. He was like, yeah, and here we are, multi-million-dollar company later. It's kind of like, that's not how companies are made. It takes time and planning, and it's like Siri, you have to know people, you know what I mean?
Right.
You've got to have investments and lots of things are involved with this. So it seems like this is literally just the brainchild of two extremely rich LA people in the Hollywood, in the industry. You know what I mean? Who live on a weird occult place called Temple Hill. Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of,
they've probably been steeped in it their whole lives. So like when this symbolism comes through, it's not because they had to do the research. They just grew up with it. They just grew up around this symbolism and these things and in the occult. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it seems like they made their money originally adapting books into films. That's kind of how they broke into it. It's like, obviously, Twilight was the big break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And obviously, it's heavily seeped in the occult and trauma and everything else in that.
Don't say that, because now somebody's going to ask me to cover Twilight, and then I'm going to have to watch Twilight. So
I feel like you've heard that one before, haven't you? Yeah.
I can already see the comments on this video. So
start with Hellraiser. I'd say
start with Hellraiser, then we'll cover Twilight. Well, I just want to say, Paul, thank you so much for joining me on this, dude. I love your insight. I feel like my favorite thing, the reason I do the show the way that I do this, is because I'm getting to hear different people's perspectives and kind of pick other people's brains about the symbolism. You're definitely seeing stuff that I didn't see, and I thought it was a really fascinating conversation. Do you want to tell people, because I think what people need to do next, they need to read The Nephilim Looked Like Clowns. So tell people where they can find your work, where they can pick up the book. I'm going to put all the links in the description, by the way, for people listening or watching.
Sure. So yeah, you can actually find all my work in a series on YouTube on my channel, Understanding Conspiracy. The playlist is called The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. I think there's 45 episodes to the series, but there's actually 66 videos in the playlist because there's extra stuff in there, supplementary stuff, things I've done with other people as well, kind of just to explain this theory and idea I have that, yes, the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim looks like clowns in physical form and look like jesters in the spirit realm. And obviously, films like this, Smile, are basically just riffing off of the truth of demons, but fictionalizing it enough to hide the truth and also make some money while they're at it. Things like It are a fantastic example of what I'm talking about, based on the truth, but highly fictionalized to the point where it breaks from reality enough so you'll never find out the truth. So what I do in my work is I try and explain from a biblical standpoint how the aesthetics of the Nephilim really were clown-like. So you can find a series of videos for free, but I have just published a book in July summarizing the first half of my research, 300 pages, called The Nephilim Look Like Clowns. I'm writing the second volume now as we speak, which I'm hoping will be published in the back end of next year. But you know how these things go. It'll be published when it's published, but I do have a rough timeline. It took me a year to write the first half, so we'll see how long this one takes. But you can get that on Amazon. Go check it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you, everybody, for watching. And until next time, keep it real.